Some stories might not be right for younger kids. Watch this video at your own risk and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. I remember that night like it was burned into my eyes. February 1944. Somewhere along the Polish border, our group had been told to sweep through a bunch of empty villages. The kind of place where the snow buried the houses deeper than the war itself. The fighting was moving fast that winter, and we were told to keep moving, to secure what the bosses called points of interest. No maps, no real information, just orders written on a thin sheet that told us to move forward, to look around, and to stay quiet. We were 7 men, cold, tired. Sergeant Kappell led. Corporal Varga broke through doors. Kellerman was our medic. Horvath was our scout. Barta handled signals. Stars handled explosives, and me, the one writing this down, our rifles felt heavier than our bones. The snow stuck to our boots, crunching under every step. The sound carried far in that silence, and I couldn't shake the feeling that every crunch was calling out our spot to whoever might be watching. By midnight, we reached the outpost. It wasn't a fortress, not even army barracks, just a 2-story stone building, half hidden by pine trees with broken shutters that swung in the wind. Someone had tried to cover the windows with blackout cloth, but the fabric flapped loose, showing cracks of dim yellow light from inside. We thought it was a farmhouse at first. But the moment Corporal Varga kicked the door open, I knew this wasn't a home. The air smelled wrong. Not the damp mold of empty places, not the sour bite of spoiled food. This was sharp, like chemicals, like the stinging smell of a hospital ward. There were no beds, no kitchen, no family belongings, just narrow metal cots lined up against the walls, with straps bolted to each one. Medical, Varga muttered, sweeping his rifle across the dark hall. Or something close to it. We found charts scattered across the floor, German notes we could barely read, and a faint rubber stamp half smeared on one page with a word cut in half. What stood out wasn't the language, but the drawings. Pictures of men's bodies, but twisted. The kind of detail that belonged in a surgeon's notebook, yet wrong in ways I couldn't place. Muscles made too big, jaws pulled forward, teeth sharpened to points. Private Kellerman picked one up and whistled low. What the heck were they doing here? No one answered. None of us wanted to. We cleared the first floor in silence. The walls were lined with cabinets filled with glass bottles, most cracked or empty. A few still held dark liquid, thick and slow-moving, sticking to the glass like oil. Someone had left syringes scattered on a tray, the needles long and brutal, more like spikes than medical tools. Then we heard it from upstairs. A dragging sound, slow, uneven, like someone moving with one leg heavier than the other. The boards above us groaned with each step. Sergeant Kappell raised a fist, telling us to hold. His jaw was set tight, but his eyes showed the same thing we all felt. Fear. Not the battlefield kind. Not the fear of bombs or gunfire. This was different. We moved up the stairs one by one, rifles steady. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might echo off the walls. At the top, a hallway stretched before us. Doors on either side. Every door had a heavy lock on the outside, not the inside. Cells, not rooms. The dragging sound stopped. Kappell pointed to the far door, the only one with light leaking from the cracks. We stacked up, boots silent on the wood. On his signal, Varga twisted the handle and kicked. The door slammed open. The room reeked of sweat, blood, and something wild, like an animal cage left uncleaned. In the center, hunched against the wall, was a man, or what used to be one. His hospital gown was torn, his skin pale and stretched tight across bones that stuck out like broken sticks. His hair hung wild over his face, and when he looked up at us, I froze. His eyes caught the lantern light and glinted yellow. His teeth looked wrong, too long, too sharp, as if someone had taught a human mouth to pretend to be a wolf. He didn't speak. He growled low, guttural, like an animal. Varga cursed and raised his rifle. But Kappell barked, "Hold." We all stood there, rifles aimed, sweat freezing on our brows, while the man-beast crawled forward a step, dragging one twisted leg behind him. The iron cuff still clamped around his ankle scraped against the floor. I could barely breathe. None of us fired. None of us knew if we should. And then, just as the silence grew unbearable, we heard another sound. Movement from the other locked doors in the hallway, knocking, scratching, hands slamming weakly against the wood. We weren't alone. That was the moment I realized we had stepped into something we were never meant to see. Something the war itself had tried to bury under snow and silence. And as we stood frozen in that hallway with yellow eyes staring back at us, I knew this wasn't the kind of mission we could report when it was over. The night had only just begun, and what waited behind the other doors would change everything we thought we knew about war. We didn't fire that night. That's the first thing I want to make clear. The man in the room didn't jump at us, didn't break free of his cuff. He just stared with those yellow eyes, teeth showing, like some animal half waiting for us to make the wrong move. The scratching from the other rooms grew louder, more frantic. It felt like every locked door in that hallway held something inside, each one begging or raging to be let out. My hands shook against the rifle stock, but Sergeant Kappell ordered us to back out. Step by step, we moved away, keeping our rifles leveled until we were back down the stairs. Once we regrouped in the main hall, nobody spoke at first. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint thuds above us. Finally, Varga hissed through his teeth. "What the heck was that?" "That wasn't a man." "It was," Kappell said, voice low. "At least once, and I don't want to hear another word about it until we get proper orders." He looked at each of us in turn, his gaze hard. "Understood," we nodded. None of us liked it, but in war, the rule was simple. You kept your mouth shut until someone higher up told you otherwise. That night, we set up a guard around the building. No one slept, not properly. Some men smoked. Some just stared at the tree line, listening for sounds that didn't belong. I kept thinking about those papers we'd found. The drawings, the bottles, and that face looking up at us with eyes that didn't belong to a man anymore. The war had already shown us terrible things. Starvation, mass graves, entire villages gone. But this was different. This wasn't chaos or cruelty. This was built, made, designed by someone's hands. By dawn, a messenger arrived on motorcycle. He carried no badges, no papers, just a sealed envelope addressed directly to Kappell. I watched the sergeant read it, his jaw tightening. When he was done, he slid a smaller slip into his coat, then burned the main letter in the snow without a word. Only later did he gather us in a tight circle. "Our orders are simple," he said. "Hold this position. Do not leave. Do not send reports through radio. We're to await further instructions. No one outside this unit is to know what we've seen." The words sank like stones. We all knew what that meant. Whatever this place was, it was meant to stay hidden. Varga spat in the snow. "So what are we, guards? Lab rats ourselves?" Kappell ignored the comment. "We follow orders. That's how we stay alive." We settled into a grim routine. 2 men on watch outside, 2 inside, rotating every 4 hours. The building creaked and groaned like it had a life of its own. Sometimes at night, we'd hear the prisoners upstairs growling, whispering, or crying out words we couldn't make sense of. One evening, while checking the storage room, Kellerman found crates stacked against the wall, each stamped with a black cross, Nazi medical supply marks. Inside were surgical tools, gloves, and thick leather straps that reeked of sweat and blood. On one crate, a faded ink stamp showed only half a word. "Were." Kellerman stared at it and muttered, "Looks like they were trying to build a hospital." He paused, then shook his head. "No, not a hospital. A cage." None of us disagreed. The days dragged. We grew restless. Food was limited, just hard bread and tins of meat from our own supplies. The building had no kitchen, no sign of normal life. It was never meant for living. It was meant for testing, and every time I looked at the second floor, I felt a pull in my stomach. Whatever they were doing up there, it wasn't meant to be seen by ordinary soldiers. On the 4th day, our uneasy silence broke. Private Horvath was on watch inside when one of the locked doors upstairs slammed so hard the whole house shook. We rushed up, rifles ready, but the door held. From inside came guttural roars, fists pounding, the sound of wood splintering. For a moment I thought the door would burst clean off its hinges, and then just as sudden, silence. Horvath backed away, pale as snow. "That's no man in there." "Not anymore." Kappell barked at us to return to post, but his voice lacked the iron it usually carried. We could all see it. He was shaken too. That night, while most tried to sleep, I stayed awake near the fire. Kellerman sat beside me, smoking quietly. After a long silence, he spoke. "You know what this is, don't you?" I shook my head. He leaned closer, his whisper sharp. "Experiments. The Germans. They're testing something. Men into beasts. Soldiers that don't feel fear, don't break under bullets. Why else would they lock them up like animals?" I wanted to dismiss it, but my mind returned to those yellow eyes, to the growl that rattled the floorboards, to the drawings of jaws and teeth. I didn't answer because deep down I feared he was right. On the 6th day, another messenger came. Same as before, no badges, no identity. He handed Kappell another sealed envelope. The sergeant read it, burned it, and called us in. "This building is now under restricted control," he said. "We are to hold position until extraction. No contact with locals. No movement beyond 1 kilometer. Whatever happens inside, we do not interfere. Clear?" The words tasted like ash. We were soldiers, not jailers. But orders were orders. Still questions burned holes in my mind. Who gave these orders? Where were they coming from, and why us? 7 nameless soldiers chosen to guard a place that seemed pulled out of some nightmare. I started to notice things, little details. The prisoners upstairs were changing. Their voices deepened, their breathing heavier. Once when I passed the hallway, I swore I caught the scent of wet fur, though there were no animals anywhere near. And sometimes in the dead of night I thought I heard footsteps, not from above but from the walls themselves. The turning point came on the 8th night. Horvath had gone missing from his post. At first, we thought he'd fallen asleep in the cold, but when we searched, we found the upstairs hallway door ajar. One of the cells had been forced open, the lock twisted clean off like it was made of tin. Inside, the room was empty. Blood smeared the walls, and in the corner lay Horvath's rifle, snapped clean in 2. That was when we knew whatever they had locked up wasn't contained anymore. We spent the rest of that night barricading the stairs, dragging cabinets and tables across to form a wall. Varga kept muttering prayers under his breath. Kellerman refused to speak at all, just cleaned his rifle over and over like the motion might hold him together. Kappell said nothing, but I saw it in his eyes. He knew this was bigger than us, bigger than orders. When dawn came, none of us felt relief. We just waited, listening, rifles tight in our grip because now the scratching wasn't just behind the doors upstairs. It was closer, louder, crawling down the walls toward us. And I realized then, we weren't guarding prisoners anymore. We were trapped with them. The silence of that morning didn't last. Within hours, everything we thought we knew about this mission shattered in ways we couldn't take back. Morning light didn't bring comfort. If anything, it made the fear sharper. The snow outside glared bright, but inside the building, shadows still hung heavy. Every creak of the wood, every drip of melting ice down the wall set us on edge. We weren't soldiers holding ground anymore. We were men caught in something we didn't understand. Kappell gathered us after sunrise. His face was drawn tight, beard flecked with frost. "We keep the barricade up. No one goes upstairs without my order. Stay sharp. Stay alive." No one argued, not even Varga, who usually had a mouth for everything. We were too tired, too afraid, and too aware that Horvath was gone for good. Still, the questions hung over us. If one of those things had broken loose, where was it now? The blood in the empty cell told part of the story, but not all. Did it drag Horvath outside? Did it crawl into the woods? Or worse, was it still here somewhere in the house waiting? We set up shifts. 2 men guarding the barricade. 2 outside keeping watch. 2 resting. The hours dragged. My ears picked up every sound. The wind pushing against the shutters. The low groan of the wood. The distant knock of branches in the cold. And underneath it all, something else. Scraping, slow, deliberate. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Then Kellerman froze beside me, head tilted. "You hear that?" The sound was coming from inside the wall, not the floor above, not the stairwell. The wall itself. Something heavy moving between the studs, pressing against the wood. The board shuddered faintly, dust drifting down. Varga swore and backed away. "They're in the walls now. Christ almighty!" Kappell snapped at him to shut it, but his own eyes flicked toward the shifting boards. We all knew he was just as rattled. That night was the worst yet. I was on the second watch when it began. The fire had burned low, the room dim except for the glow of embers. Kellerman dozed with his rifle across his lap. Then came the thud. A single sharp crack from the far wall. We spun toward it. Another thud followed, louder, making the boards bow inward. Then scratching. Long, deep scratches running down the inside of the wall. Before we could react, something punched clean through. A claw. Long, curved, slick with blood. It ran down, tearing splinters loose before vanishing back inside. Kellerman jolted awake, rifle raised. Varga fired before Kappell could stop him. The shot tore through the boards, splinters exploding. Silence followed, but only for a moment. The house seemed to breathe, then groans from every wall, scratches from every side, like the whole place was alive with movement. We backed toward the fire, rifles tight, trying to cover every direction at once. Then it stopped, just like that. Silence, heavy and absolute. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. By dawn, Kappell looked 10 years older. He ordered us to reinforce the walls with whatever we could find: boards, nails, furniture, even sandbags from our supplies. We worked fast, our hands numb, eyes darting to every corner. When we finished, the house looked less like an outpost and more like a coffin we'd built around ourselves. Around noon, we heard engines. At first, we thought it was our relief, but when the trucks pulled up, the markings told us otherwise. German, 3 vehicles, each with black crosses painted bold on their doors. We scrambled for cover, rifles ready. But the soldiers who climbed out weren't infantry. They wore long white coats over their uniforms, faces pale, expressions flat. Doctors, scientists. Behind them, 2 guards dragged a stretcher covered in canvas. Whatever lay under it shifted faintly, chains clinking. Kappell ordered us to hold fire. The Nazi unit entered without fear, as if they already knew we were inside. Their leader, a tall man with a thin mustache, spoke calm German. We only half understood. Kappell responded in broken words, but the meaning was clear enough. This wasn't our operation anymore. The scientists went upstairs. They didn't flinch at the growls behind the locked doors. They didn't react to the smell of blood. They moved like men accustomed to horror. One carried a black case filled with needles and bottles. Another scribbled in a notebook as if cataloging animals. We stayed downstairs, forced to watch their shadows stretch across the walls. The sounds from above, shouts, chains, metallic clatters, turned my stomach. After an hour they came back down. Their coats were spattered dark. They didn't look at us, didn't explain, didn't ask permission. They loaded their stretcher back into the truck, slammed the doors, and drove off, leaving us in silence once more. Not one word of what had happened was spoken among us, but the message was clear. These things upstairs weren't accidents. They were projects. That evening, Kappell called us close. His voice was low, rough. We've seen too much. I don't care what orders say anymore. If we stay here, none of us leave alive. We wait for dark. Then, we burn this place to the ground. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Burning it. That made sense. Fire would cleanse whatever nightmare this building held. We spent the next hours gathering fuel, crates, broken furniture, rags soaked in lamp oil. The plan was simple. Set the blaze, retreat to the woods, and never look back. But as the sun sank, something happened that shattered any illusion of control. The barricade we'd built at the stairs began to shake, slowly at first, then violently, as if a battering ram was pounding against it. The cabinets groaned, nails snapping. The roar that followed wasn't human. It was a sound that froze the blood in my veins. Deep, guttural, filled with rage. The barricade burst, wood splintered, debris flying, and out of the smoke and dust came a figure, hunched and twisted, dragging chains still locked to its wrists. Its face was a nightmare. Half man, half wolf, jaw stretched, teeth bared, eyes glowing bright yellow. It didn't hesitate. It leaped. Kellerman fired point blank. The bullet tore into its shoulder, but it didn't slow. It slammed into him, sending both crashing into the wall. His scream cut short. The snow and wall went dark where the thing hit him. Chaos erupted. Varga and I fired, bullets thudding into its body, but it moved with impossible speed, throwing Kellerman's limp body aside as if he were nothing. Blood sprayed across the walls. Kappell shouted for us to fall back, to get outside. We stumbled through the doorway, firing blindly, ears ringing with the beast's roars. Outside, the snow reflected the muzzle flashes, each burst lighting the trees. The creature followed, snarling, bleeding, but relentless. It circled us fast, low to the ground, chains dragging. Its breath came out in clouds, sharp and heavy. Every instinct told me we were prey. Then from the trees more growls answered. Shapes moved between the trunks. Yellow eyes blinking in the dark. Not one, not two, a pack. And in that moment, standing in the snow with rifles nearly empty, I understood the truth. This wasn't an outpost. This wasn't a mistake. It was a breeding ground. And we had just been released into their hunting ground. The woods around us were no longer silent. They were alive with howls, and we had nowhere left to run. The first howl froze us where we stood. It wasn't the kind of sound a man makes, but it wasn't a simple wolf's cry either. It carried something, deeper, sharper, something that rattled my chest like it was calling straight into my bones. The beast we'd fought inside threw its head back and howled in answer. From the woods, others replied. 3, maybe 4, maybe more. The echoes rolled through the trees until the whole forest seemed to sing with their voices. We were surrounded. Kappell barked orders, pulling us into a tight circle. Varga swore under his breath, his rifle trembling in his grip. "This is it," he muttered. "We're dead men." "Shut it," Kappell snapped. "Stay calm. Watch your angles." But calm was impossible. The eyes in the tree line moved, flashing yellow when they caught the firelight from the torches we'd lit earlier. Shadows darted between trunks, fast and silent. The snow muffled their steps, but we knew they were there, watching, waiting. The first charge came quick. A dark shape burst from the tree line. Snow sprang. I fired, the shot cracking through the cold. The figure spun midair, crashed into the snow, and lay still. For a moment, hope sparked. Maybe bullets would stop them. Then the body twitched. It rose again, slow and deliberate. The round had torn through its chest, yet it kept moving. Blood poured, steam rising in the cold air, but its eyes never dimmed. That was when I knew we couldn't kill them the way we killed men. We fell back toward the outpost, firing as we moved. The snow was slick with blood, ours and theirs. The creature from inside tore through our barricade as if it were nothing, and the others joined it. The night became a blur of teeth, claws, muzzle flashes, and screams. Varga went down first. One of them leaped from the side, slamming him into the snow. His screams cut off sharp, and when the thing rose again, its muzzle was red. We barely had time to react before another came from behind, driving me into the snow. Kappell emptied half his magazine into it before it finally collapsed. Stars coughed, alive, but bleeding. 3 men down, 4 of us left. We stumbled back into the house, slamming the heavy door shut. The walls shook with impacts as the creatures hurled themselves against it, claws raking the wood. We shoved whatever furniture we hadn't already used back into place, stacking it high. Our hands slick with sweat despite the cold. The roars outside echoed through the night. "They're playing with us," I whispered. Kappell didn't answer. He just paced, rifle ready, eyes darting between the windows. Hours passed like years. The howls circled, sometimes near, sometimes far. The snow outside glowed under the moon, the tracks of beasts crisscrossing in every direction. We sat in silence, breathing shallow, ears straining for the next attack. It never came. By dawn, the forest was quiet again. The beasts were gone, or hiding. Either way, the reprieve gave us no comfort. We buried Varga and Kellerman in shallow graves behind the house. Horvath's body was never found. Kappell said nothing during the burials, only pressed his cap low and moved back inside. As we worked, I noticed something. The tracks in the snow weren't just leading away. Some circled back, some stopped short, and a few ended mid-step as if the creature had vanished into the air. That thought chilled me worse than the wind. Later that day, a lone straggler stumbled out of the trees. Private Novak, frostbitten and shaking. We pulled him inside, gave him a blanket, and only minutes later, a convoy arrived. Not soldiers, not medics. Trucks just like before, with the same black cross markings. We readied our rifles, but Kappell lowered his weapon. "Hold," he ordered. His voice cracked just slightly. A Nazi research detachment dismounted. Same long white coats, same cold expressions. This time they carried crates and barrels, hauling them into the building like they were restocking supplies. One of them glanced at the graves out back, but said nothing. Their leader approached Kappell. The two spoke in low German, too fast for me to follow. When it ended, the man handed Kappell a slip of paper. Kappell didn't burn it this time. He just folded it, tucked it into his coat, and walked away. The Germans left as quickly as they'd come. We crowded him after. "What did they say?" I demanded. He stared at me for a long moment, then finally spoke. "Our orders stand. We hold this ground until relieved." "That's suicide," Kellerman's replacement, Private Novak, snapped. "Those things will come back. We can't fight them." "Orders are orders," Kappell repeated, but I saw his hand shake when he lit a cigarette. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the attack, hearing the screams, seeing Varga's face vanish beneath the snow. I sat near the boarded window, rifle on my lap, eyes on the tree line. That's when I saw it. Not a beast, a man. He moved through the snow slow, limping, a torn coat hanging from his shoulders. His face was pale, his eyes sunken but unmistakable. Horvath. I blinked hard, thinking my mind was playing tricks. But no, he was there, stumbling closer, raising a hand weakly toward the house. "Horvath!" I called, shaking the others awake. They rushed to the window, rifles ready. Kappell cursed under his breath. Outside, Horvath collapsed to his knees, then fell face first into the snow. We debated for seconds that felt like hours. It was Novak who finally moved. "We can't just leave him," he said. And before Kappell could stop him, he slipped out the door. The three of us covered him from the window as he trudged across the snow. He knelt by Horvath, turned him over, and that's when Horvath's eyes snapped open. Yellow. He lunged faster than any man should move. Novak's scream cut through the night and then broke off. The snow went dark where they struggled. We fired, bullets tearing through both of them. Horvath crumpled. Novak beneath him, neither moving again. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. They weren't just making beasts out of strangers. They were making them out of us. After that, everything changed. None of us trusted each other fully. Every cough, every twitch, every shadow across someone's face felt like a warning sign. Were they still themselves? Would they be next? Would I? We barely spoke. The silence between us grew heavier than the howls outside. I caught myself staring into the cracked mirror one night, searching my own eyes for a glint of yellow. On the 10th day, Kappell called us together. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he set a pistol on the table. "I won't let them turn me," he said. "Not like Horvath, not like those things," no one argued. But I saw something then, something that twisted my gut. The paper he'd been given, the one he hadn't burned. He carried it always hidden in his coat, and sometimes when he thought no one was watching, I saw him unfold it and read. His lips moved, repeating the words silently, and I realized something I hadn't dared to think before. Maybe he wasn't just following orders. Maybe he knew more than he let on. The forest stayed quiet that night. Too quiet. No howls, no scratching, no movement. I should have felt relief. Instead, dread settled deeper in my chest. Because silence meant only one thing. They were waiting. And when they came again, it wouldn't be to test us. It would be to finish us. I thought I had seen the worst of it. But the truth, the real reason we were there, was something none of us were prepared to face. The forest held its breath that night. No wind, no birds, no distant crack of branches, just a cold stillness that pressed on the ears until the silence became a sound of its own. We sat with our rifles across our knees, watching the dark windows, waiting for the first shape to move. Kappell stood near the door with the pistol he'd set on the table earlier. His coat was buttoned to the throat, his cap pulled low. The paper in his pocket made a square shape over his heart. I could not stop looking at it. "Listen," he said, voice quiet. "No one goes alone. If I fall, you run for the tree line. Do not try to carry me. Do not look back." Kellerman and Varga were gone. That left me, Kappell, Barta, and Stars, barely holding together. We had less than 6 full magazines between us, 2 grenades, and a plan that was more hope than plan. If the beasts came, we would fall back room to room, light the oil we'd spread, and turn the place into a torch. I checked the matchbook in my pocket for the 10th time. Barta stared at the boarded window. "They're hungry," he said. "They're patient," I said. "That's worse." We waited. The first sound wasn't a howl. It was a whisper. It came from the stairwell, soft, steady, like someone speaking under their breath. Barta's eyes widened. German, he mouthed. Kappell raised a hand. We moved toward the stairs as one, rifles ready. The whisper carried words. Then I caught a few. Protocol and subject, dosage. A calm voice. A measured voice. Not a beast at all. Kappell nodded once at me. We cleared the corner fast. The stairwell was dim. A lantern set on a step halfway up. Shadows jumped on the walls. At the top stood a man in a white coat, the same thin mustache as before. The scientist. He held a small case in one hand, a fountain pen in the other, as if he had been writing while he walked. Ruhig, he said, calm. Barta aimed at his head. I don't take orders in German. The man lifted his hands, the case dangling from his fingers. He looked at Kappell, not at me. Sergeant, he said in careful accented speech, you were told to hold this ground until relief. We were told nothing about what you kept here, Kappell replied. The man glanced toward the second floor. You were told enough. You lost control, I said. He met my eyes then. His face held no shame and no pride, only interest, like a man looking at a machine that had worked as designed. Control, he said softly, is only the pause before the dosage catches up. From behind him, a low growl rolled down the stairs. Not close, not far, just present. Kappell lifted his pistol. Call them off. The man raised a finger. They are not dogs. They do not answer to names, but they do answer to hunger. He nodded toward the case in his hand. And to dosage. What is in there? I asked. A way to push a man past the point where fear lives, he said. A way to keep him moving when pain should stop him. A way to use him until he is used up. Out of who? Barta said. Prisoners, civilians, patients, the man said. The state keeps many. Some are not missed. Something in me hardened. Then, like a door closing, I thought of the first man we saw, chained to the bed, teeth filed to points, eyes yellow in the light. I thought of Horvath's last look before he left. We're going to burn this place, Kappell said. The man looked almost bored. Yes, he said. You will try. His eyes flicked again to Kappell. Not to the pistol, to the pocket. You received the addendum, he said. Kappell's jaw clenched. I received orders. Then you know who you serve, the man said. Barta swore. Enough talk. He shifted his rifle. The man did not flinch. Shoot me and you will die slower, he said softly. Or you can listen and perhaps you die fast. From above the growl deepened. A chain scraped. Boards creaked. Barta swore again and backed down a step. Down, Kappell ordered. Back to the hall. The scientist did not follow. He climbed the last steps and vanished around the landing, his white coat flashing once like a signal. We fell back, hearts thudding, rifles up. Lantern swinging. Light it, Kappell said. Barta struck a match with shaking hands and lit the first rag bundle. Oil caught at once, licking up the wood, smoke curling low under the ceiling. The fire moved fast, hungry and bright. Heat pushed into my face. I felt the matchbook in my pocket, like a small beating heart. The first beast came through the smoke. Low, fast, a blur of muscle and teeth. Barta fired twice. The thing twisted but did not slow. Kappell's pistol snapped, and the creature flinched just enough for me to slam a burst into its chest. It went down hard, slid, and hit the far wall. It tried to rise again, jaws clacking, then went still. Stars stumbled back, coughing, eyes watering. More, he choked. More behind, I heard them. Not howls now. Breathing heavy, wet, the sound of lungs built for running. Kappell pointed to the corridor. Room to room, he snapped. Give ground. Light each doorway. Squeeze them. We moved. Smoke followed like a second enemy. I pulled another rag from my belt, soaked with oil, and set it against the frame. The flame jumped and ran. Heat pressed on my skin, making the rifle slick in my hands. Shapes moved in the haze, too many to count. We fired until the barrels burned. The beasts slammed the walls, rattled the doors, scraped along the floorboards like they meant to burrow through. One hit the doorway as the flames flared, recoiled, then leaped high through the smoke. Stars screamed and went down under it. The boards went dark where they struggled. I aimed and shot until the chamber clicked empty, and the thing sagged and slid off him. Stars didn't move. 3 left now. Me, Kappell, Barta. Back, Kappell coughed. To the cellar. None of us had checked it. We had been too busy watching the stairs and the forest and the walls that felt alive. Now we ran for the heavy door in the back hall and heaved it open. Cold air spilled up, thick and wet like the breath of the earth. We stumbled down uneven steps into a narrow space of stone and damp. My boots hit puddles. The ceiling was low. Pipes ran along it with rusted clamps, some sweating, some dry. A single bulb swung from a cord, casting a small yellow circle that made the dark beyond feel deeper. Barta pulled the door and shot the latch from the inside. It would not hold long. We heard claws hit wood, then teeth. The beam shook. "Light more," Barta said. "No," I said, staring into the cellar. "There are doors here too. Steel ones, not locked from the inside. Locked from the outside. A small window set eye height in each with a slider. Numbers were stenciled in black. 7, 8, 9. Lower down, a drain ran the length of the room like a scar. I moved to the first door and slid the window. The smell hit me first. Metal and old blood. Inside, a chair stood bolted to the floor. Straps, a tray, a glass cabinet with empty slots, a wall calendar with the pages torn down to January 1944. On a metal table lay a stack of files. I grabbed the top one, fingers wet with sweat, and flipped it open. Photos fell out. Blurred faces, bodies marked with pen lines, teeth filed, scars darkened with drops. Each photo had a name printed beneath, then crossed out and replaced with a number. Barta opened another file. "Psychiatric intake," he said, reading slow. "Transferred from—" He stopped. The place name had been blacked out with heavy ink. At the bottom, a black stamp glared up. Werwolf Program. Under that, in smaller text, Widerstand eins phase. The room itself seemed colder after we read it. I had heard the word once. Werewolf, a rumor, a plan for bands of fighters left behind when the front moved past. But this was not recruits and rifles. This was something else wearing the same name like a mask. "Listen," Kappell said. The door above bent. Wood split. Smoke poured down the steps carrying sparks. Behind it came voices. Not the beast, men, German boots on boards, orders given sharp and fast. The scientists had not come alone this time. "They'll trap us," Barta said. "Smoke us out." "They'll do worse," Kappell said. He moved past us to the far end of the cellar to a wall that looked wrong. Stone blocks but newer, the mortar clean. He ran his hand along it, then set his shoulder and pushed. The wall shifted, a narrow seam opening to a black tunnel beyond. "You knew," I said. He did not meet my eyes. "The addendum," he said. "If containment failed, withdraw down the service tunnel. Hold for retrieval." "So you were going to leave us?" Barta asked, voice low. "I was going to get whoever I could out," Kappell said. "Move!" Behind us, the cellar door jumped under a heavy blow. A hinge screamed. Smoke crawled over the floor like a living thing. We went into the tunnel. It was tight enough that our shoulders brushed both sides. Water dripped somewhere ahead. The air smelled like stone and old rain. We moved in a crouch, boots sliding. The dark closed in quick. Kappell's lighter showed rough walls, then a junction. A narrow left turn, a wider right. He chose right. We had gone maybe 20 meters when a lantern bobbed up behind us. Not ours. From the cellar, a German voice shouted down the tunnel. Another answered. A third let a leash go slack. The growl rolled toward us like a wave. "Run," Kappell said. We ran. The tunnel angled downward, then leveled, then pushed us around a bend where the ceiling dipped so low we had to crawl. My knees scraped. My rifle banged against stone. Behind us, claws struck rock. Sparks spat. The sound faster and closer. We burst into a chamber where the tunnel widened just enough to stand. A heavy steel door waited on the far side, rusted but thick with a wheel handle. Barta threw himself at it and spun the wheel. It moved slow, metal screaming, then finally gave. The door opened to night's breath, then more. Through, Kappell pushed me first. I slipped past into another corridor, drier here with brick laid clean and straight. The air tasted less like a grave. Barta followed, then Kappell. A shape hit the doorway as the steel swung. Teeth flashed. A paw hand jammed into the gap, claws hooking the edge. The door bucked. Barta shoved. The claws tore grooves in the metal. I fired through the opening twice. The creature howled and withdrew. Kappell spun the wheel hard. The door slammed and locked. Silence slammed with it, for a heartbeat only. Then the thing threw itself against the steel. The door shook but held. We leaned against the wall, gasping. My chest burned. My hand shook so hard I could hear the rattle of the rifle sling. We stood there until the blows slowed. Until the thing moved away. Until the only sounds were our breath and the slow drip somewhere far ahead. "Keep moving," Kappell said. We followed the brick corridor until it slanted up. It ended at a ladder. iron rungs fixed into the wall. Above, a square of wood showed a hatch. Kappell went first, pushed, and the hatch gave. Cold air spilled over us. Night air, the kind that smells of pine and open space. We climbed into the trees. The outpost was 100 meters behind us, fire blooming from its windows. Flames licked the roof. The smoke bent low under the night sky and ran flat into the woods. Sparks drifted like 6 stars. Shapes moved in the glow. Men, not beasts, Germans. White coats and field gray mixed. They formed a line facing the blaze. Rifles ready, waiting for anything that came out. A command voice cut the air, calm, certain, the thin mustache. The scientist. Kappell crouched in the brush. He looked to the fire, then to us. "This is our only chance," he said, voice thin from smoke. We go around, we get to their trucks, we cut them loose, we're gone before they know it. Barta shook his head. "They'll hunt us," he whispered. "They'll hunt us until we're meat." "Maybe," Kappell said. He pulled the folded paper from his pocket and looked at it one last time. Then he put it in my hand. I didn't want it. My fingers closed anyway. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you'll tell it straight," he said. "Because you still believe the truth matters." I tucked the paper into my shirt. Kappell rose to a half-crouch and pointed. "You two take the far side," he said. "I'll draw them. When they turn, you run for the trucks. Smash the distributor caps. Pour the oil. If you get a chance, you light it. And you?" I asked. He looked at the burning house. His eyes were red from smoke, but steady. "I'll do what I should have done the first night," he said. "I'll pull them off you." Before I could speak, he moved. He didn't run at the line. He walked fast, straight, rifle down, hands visible, a lone figure stepping into the firelight. The scientists saw him. Their eyes met across the drift of sparks. Kappell raised his voice clear and hard. "You want your subjects?" he shouted. "Come through me." The line shifted, rifles lifted. A leash snapped. The growl that answered rose and rose until it shook the needles off the pines. The beast came out of the smoke like parts of the fire itself. Low and fast, chains trailing, eyes bright as coals. Kappell fired first. The line broke toward him. The scientist smiled. A small, pleased curve of the mouth like a man satisfied with a calculation. "Now," I hissed to Barta. We moved low through the brush, angling wide. The trucks waited in the dark, backs to the trees, tarps pulled tight over crates. I saw the profile of the cab, the curve of the hood, the glint of the cap on the distributor. I slid to it on my belly, reached up and yanked the cap free. Wires snapped. Barta did the same to the next one. Shots cracked. A roar rolled. I heard Kappell shout once, clear and fierce, and then swallowed by the fire and the beasts and the rifles. "Oil!" Barta whispered. We slashed the barrels with a bayonet. Thick liquid poured black on black. It soaked the snow and found the tires like it had a mind. I pulled the matchbook. For a second I could not strike. Not because of fear, because my hands would not obey me. They shook like a machine out of tune. I took a breath, set one hand against the hood to steady it, and scraped the match. The head flared. The light was small and human and warm. I touched it to the oil. Fire stitched across the snow to the rear tires. In a breath, the trucks became sheets of flame. The blast from the fuel tank punched the air and hurled us into the brush. Heat slammed over my skin. Shouts turned. The line broke. The beast wheeled and looked back. Torn between scent and order, the scientist spun. His white coat lit orange, his face hard at last. The fire reached the crates. Inside, something popped in a fast, ugly rhythm, then hissed like chemicals escaping. Thick black smoke poured, and for a moment the world narrowed to heat, dark, and the taste of metal on my tongue. "Go," Barta coughed. "Go," we ran into the trees. Behind us, over the roar and the crack and the wild noise of men and beasts, a single shot cut clean. It carried farther than it should have. It cut from a pistol, not a rifle. It sounded like a decision made and kept. I did not look back. We ran until the firelight faded and the cold found us again and our breath came like knives. When we finally fell behind a low ridge and lay with our faces in the snow, the forest trembled with distant howls and the long rolling groan of burning timber. I pulled the paper from my shirt with numb fingers. Barta watched me. "What is it?" he asked. "Orders," I said. "Names, doses, a stamp." He spat blood into the snow. "You going to keep it?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because if we die, at least the truth dies with us," I said. And if we live, someone will have to hear it. The wind shifted, carrying smoke over us like a blanket. Somewhere behind that smoke, a man in a white coat did his sums again and decided how much a human body could carry before it broke. Somewhere behind that, a sergeant held a line long enough to tear a hole we could run through. Barta rolled onto his back and looked up at the stars like he was checking if they were still there. "Where now?" he asked. "East," I said. "Away from the road, away from the packs. We find a village. We find someone who will listen. Will anyone listen?" he asked, eyes closed. I folded the paper back into my shirt and felt the square press against my heart. "They will," I said. "They have to." We rose and moved through the black trees, leaving a burning house, a burning convoy, and a story the snow would try to swallow. And I knew as we walked that what we had seen would not stop at that outpost. It would move like smoke. It would find new rooms, new doors with locks on the outside, new men willing to listen to a calm voice and call it progress. It would wear new names in new wars. I did not know then if we would see morning, but I knew if morning came, it would come with a cost. We walked toward it anyway. Morning would bring a reckoning, and with it the question I feared most. Who would we be when the guns were quiet and the truth asked for our names? By dawn, we had put miles between us and the outpost. My legs were dead weights, each step a fight against the frozen ground. Barta limped on his right side, his boot torn where a claw had grazed him. We didn't speak much. The forest said enough on its own. Creaking trees, crows breaking the silence, the far-off crackle of fire carried on the wind. When the first light finally touched the snow, we stopped on a ridge. From there, through the thinning trees, we could see smoke curling on the horizon. The outpost was still burning. The trucks, too, maybe even the woods around them. The black plume climbed into the pale sky like a signal fire. "Someone will come," Barta said, squinting against the sun. "German, Russian, maybe both," I nodded. "And when they do, there'll be nothing left but ash." For a moment, that gave me comfort. The thought of that cursed place erased from the earth. But the weight in my shirt pocket told me otherwise. Nothing was erased. The paper carried proof. Stamps, names, numbers, a program with a title no one was supposed to know. And we were still alive to remember it. We moved east through the trees, avoiding the main roads. Hunger gnawed worse than the cold. Our rations had burned with the outpost. We survived on melted snow and whatever scraps we found in abandoned huts. Molded bread, a strip of smoked meat so hard we had to cut it thin with a knife. Every sound made us flinch. Branches snapped. We spun with rifles raised, certain the pack was near. But the woods only held their breath and waited. Whatever stalked here was busy elsewhere. 3 days we walked. 3 nights we slept in shifts, huddled against tree trunks, rifles clutched to our chests. My dreams were fevered things. Kappell's last shout, Horvath's yellow eyes, the snap of bones in the dark. More than once I woke with my hands around my own throat, clawing at myself as if trying to pull something out. Barta didn't sleep much at all. He just sat with his back to the fire, eyes wide, muttering prayers in a low, steady voice. On the 4th day, we reached a village, a quiet place, half collapsed, roofs caved under snow. Smoke no longer rose from the chimneys, and doors hung open like mouths that had nothing left to say. But people still lived there. We saw them peering from cracks in the shutters as we passed. Thin faces, wide eyes, children clutching at their mothers' skirts. Fear sat heavy in the air. An old man finally stepped out to meet us. He wore a wool coat patched in 20 places, a stick in his hand. He didn't ask who we were. He didn't ask what side we fought on. He just looked at our torn uniforms, our rifles, the ashen blood still staining our coats, and said, "You're not staying here." "We need food," I said, my voice cracked. "And a fire to warm by. Just one night." He shook his head. "This village has seen enough soldiers. You bring trouble with you." He wasn't wrong. Still, the ache in my stomach bent me forward. "Please." Barta stepped up beside me, his hand trembling as he held out his last bullet. "Trade," he said. "1 cartridge for bread." The old man's eyes flicked to the bullet, then back to our faces. He spat into the snow and finally waved us toward a barn at the edge of the village. "1 night, then you go." We thanked him, though the words felt small. Inside the barn, we built a fire in an old iron pot. The warmth seeped into my bones, almost painful after so many days in the cold. We ate hard bread and a thin stew the villagers brought. It tasted like dirt, but it was food. For the first time since the outpost, I let myself breathe. That night, Barta finally spoke more than a few words. He stared into the fire, his face hollow. "You think anyone will believe us?" "Yes," I said, though I wasn't sure. He shook his head. "They'll say it was the war, that we saw too much, that our minds cracked. They'll bury it like they bury everything else." I pulled the folded paper from my shirt and set it on my knee. "Not if they see this." Barta looked at it for a long time. His lips moved like he was praying again. Then he whispered, "You should burn it." I stared at him. "You're telling me after all this, after Kappell, after Horvath, you want to let it vanish?" "I'm telling you, the men who made that paper are still alive," he said. "And they don't let secrets go. If you carry it, they'll hunt you. They'll hunt me too." I folded it again and tucked it away. "Then let them hunt. At least the world will know what they're hunting for." We didn't speak after that. The fire burned low and the barn filled with the smell of smoke and animals long gone. We left the next morning. The old man watched us from his doorway, his face unreadable. As we passed, he said, "The snow covers tracks, but not scent. Wolves always find what bleeds." I didn't answer. His words followed me long after the village vanished behind us. Weeks blurred together. We kept moving east toward where we thought our lines might be. Sometimes we saw patrols in the distance. German, Russian, didn't matter. We stayed hidden. Ghosts in the woods. Barta grew weaker. The wound in his leg festered. By the second week, he could barely walk. We stopped often, every mile slower than the last. One night, as we lay in a half-collapsed church, he pulled his coat tighter and said, "When I'm gone, don't waste time digging. Leave me. Just take the paper, promise." "You're not gone yet," I said. He smiled faintly. "No, but I hear the wolves in my dreams. I didn't promise." But when morning came and he couldn't rise, I knew what he had asked was coming true. I stayed with him until his breath slowed and stopped. Then I covered him with his own coat and left him beneath the broken cross. I carried the paper alone after that. I don't know how many more days I walked. Hunger made the world tilt and cold numbed everything except the ache in my chest. But one morning I saw smoke again. Not black like from fire, but white rising in clean plumes. Russian positions, our allies. I stumbled into their camp like a ghost. Soldiers rushed to meet me, rifles raised, then lowered when they saw the state I was in. Hands caught me under the arms, voices shouting. Someone gave me water. Someone else stripped my rifle away. When I could finally speak, I told them I was from a unit that no longer existed, that the men with me were gone, that I carried something important. They didn't believe me at first, but I gave them the paper. And when their officer saw the stamps, the names, the word werewolf printed in black ink, his face changed. He folded it carefully, slipped it into his coat, and told his men to get me food. That was the last I ever saw of it. They sent me back from the front not long after. I was thin, sick, coughing blood into my handkerchief. The doctor said my lungs had frozen too many nights. They called it pneumonia, but I knew it was something deeper. The war itself had set into me, bone and marrow. They didn't ask about the outpost, not officially. A few men came in plain clothes. They asked questions, wrote in small notebooks, and then left without a word. I told them everything anyway. Every face, every howl, every flame. I told them about Horvath, about Kappell, about the scientists with their calm eyes. I don't know if they believed me, but I know this. They kept the paper. Sometimes I think about that night in the snow, the match flaring in my hand, the trucks burning. I wonder if it mattered, or if it was just one small fire in a forest already set to burn for years. Other times I think about Kappell, standing in the firelight with his pistol raised, the beast charging him, the line of Germans shouting, the scientist watching like it was all a test he had already measured. I think about the shot that rang clear. And I know that if nothing else, one man chose to end it on his own terms. I survived, but the war did not leave me. In quiet moments, I still hear the chains dragging across the floorboards. I still see Horvath's yellow eyes. I still smell the iron tang of blood mixed with smoke. The war ended, they say, but not everything ended with it. Some things were carried forward. Some things were written into files, stamped with seals and tucked into drawers where daylight never reached. And some things walked out of those woods wearing human faces. I thought survival meant freedom. Instead, it meant carrying a story no one was ready to hear. A story the snow tried to bury, but one I will not forget. Years have passed since those nights in the snow. Yet I speak of them as if they happened yesterday. Time doesn't erase certain things. It only pushes them deeper, waiting for a quiet hour to return. People ask me what war is. Some expect talk of battles, of medals, of front lines. But war is not always that. War is the silence after gunfire stops. War is the secrets no one will admit to. War is carrying a memory so heavy you pray for sleep. And when sleep comes, it carries the memory back to you in a different shape. I gave the paper to men who promised it would reach the right hands. I never saw it again. Maybe it sits in a drawer, sealed, unread. Maybe it was destroyed, burned like so many other truths. Maybe it became part of something larger, filed away under new names. I'll never know, but I know this. What we saw was not an accident. It was planned. It was paid for, signed off, carried out with calm hands and steady voices. Men in white coats, notebooks in their pockets, spoke of doses and progress while human beings were broken down and rebuilt into something less than human. And if they could do it once, they could do it again. Sometimes I sit alone and wonder if those creatures, those poor twisted souls, were ever truly killed. Fire burns flesh, yes, but what about the idea? Ideas survive. They slip from place to place, changing uniforms, changing languages, but never dying. When I hear news of secret programs, when I read whispers of experiments done far from the public eye, I feel that same cold I felt in the walls of that outpost. The world calls it progress. I call it the echo of that same word stamped on the papers, werewolf. And I wonder if somewhere in some hidden room another man sits strapped to a bed while voices around him discuss dosage. I don't tell the story for pity. I don't tell it for recognition. I tell it because silence is worse. Silence lets the men in coats win. Silence buries the truth under snow until it is forgotten. I see Kappell's face sometimes, lit by fire, steady even as the pack charged him. I hear Horvath's scream, cut short as the yellow spread into his eyes. I feel Barta's last grip on my arm before I left him beneath that broken church. They deserve to be remembered, not as soldiers, not as experiments, as men who walked into something they never chose and who faced it as best they could. I am still here, but I am not whole. My body carries scars. My lungs ache with every breath. Nights are worse. Nights bring the sound of claws in the walls. The heavy breath just out of sight. I remind myself it is only memory, but memory has teeth. If you've listened this far, then remember this one thing. The war is not just what happened in the open. It is what was hidden, what was locked away, what never made it to the reports. I was a soldier once. I followed orders. But that night in the snow, I learned some orders are written only to bury the truth. The only order worth keeping now is this. Speak so the snow cannot erase what men did. I tell you this so silence does not win. So that when you hear the word progress, you will ask whose bones it stands on. And when you hear the word secret, you will remember there are things worse than bullets. Things men build in silence, waiting for the next war to give them purpose. That is what remains. That is what I carry. That is why I speak. You're still watching without subscribing. Make sure you don't miss the next story. Subscribe now and share with your friends. Tell us your country, the time you're watching, and any real-life incident like this. Then post it in the comments.